The long-awaited NFL season is here. Fantasy football has finally arrived, and at IDP Plus, we are geared up and ready to go, ready to bring you that week in and week out content. And on this show, I'm your host, Axton Harding, and we're going to be covering IDP rankings week in and week out, top 12 defensive linemen, linebackers, and defensive backs each week. So without further ado, we're going to drop that intro and get right into some IDP rankings. Thanks everybody for tuning in. This is the IDP Plus ranking show for the 2025 season. As I mentioned off the top, I'm your host, Axton Harding. You can find me on Twitter at AxmanIDP. Feel free to DM me with any kind of questions or drop your questions about any kind of player, situation, ranking, whatever you might have, throw it in the comments. So without further ado, we're going to jump right into some defensive line rankings to start it off. We're just going to rip through the top 12 and I'll kind of touch on each guy here. So number one comes in at Nick Bosa for the 49ers, plays at the Seattle Seahawks this week. Number two is Myles Garrett for the Browns. He plays against the Bengals at home this week. Number three is Max Crosby for the Raiders, plays at the Patriots. Number four, I've got Jared Verse. This is actually where things are going to get a little spicy here, so I'll go more into that later. The Rams, they play the Texans this week. At five, I've got Michael Parsons. At six, I've got Aiden Hutchinson. At seven, I've got TJ Watt. At eight, I've got Trey Hendrickson. At nine, Andrew Van Ginkel. Number 10, Brian Burns. Number 11, Nick Benito. Number 12, I've got Danielle Hunter. So let's go back to the top and we'll talk about each of these guys just briefly here before we move on to our linebacker position. So Nick Bosa right off the top, the 49ers playing at the Seahawks this week. The Seahawks just flat out have a terrible offensive line. They did last year. They haven't made many changes to improve it in the offseason so far. So you're already starting off with a favorable matchup for a top-tier defensive lineman. Nick Bosa is actually coming off of his worst career season since his rookie season. And overall, in terms of a season-long production, it's his worst year in his career. Definitely can expect some positive regression here. So considering the matchup here, we're expecting kind of a bounce back for Nick Bosa because that was, again, a career low in terms of many statistical categories last year. So I'm expecting a bounce back. I think he's going to be needed as this 49ers team looks to kind of tape up their roster and make a run for the season. So Nick Bosa is going to be again, favorable matchup for the Seahawks here with a bottom five offensive line. Not to mention Sam Darnold sees ghosts when he gets pressured too much. I think that Nick Bosa is going to be able to get to him early and often. Sam Darnold was also one of the top five most sacked quarterbacks last year in a pretty good offense under Kevin O'Connell and in Minnesota. So I think that Sam Darnold is going to be very vulnerable in this matchup, and I think it's going to be a favorable one for Nick Bosa. So I love this matchup for him to be the top-ranked defensive lineman. Behind him, I've got Myles Garrett, where the Browns play against the Bengals this week. Joe Burrow was among the top five most sacked quarterbacks last year, and they haven't made any significant offensive line upgrades at this point in the offseason. So I think we can expect a little bit of the same for this season. Now, had they made a bunch of additions to the offensive line, maybe we could expect some less opportunities for opposing defensive linemen. But I think Myles Garrett is in a very favorable matchup to start the season off really hot. You're looking at a back and forth affair between the Bengals and Browns. The Bengals defense is going to allow the Browns, Joe Flacco and the Browns, to kind of push the ball downfield, and I imagine they're going to, at least, I'm not going to say that the Browns are going to be ahead at any point, but they're going to be in this game enough that the Bengals are just going to keep having to throw the ball, which is going to give Myles Garrett more opportunity to rush the passer, maybe get a sack or two in there for week one. So I think he has a good opportunity to start hot. Max Crosby comes in at number three. The Raiders play against the Patriots. The Patriots had a bottom 5 to 10 offensive line last year with Drake May at quarterback. And they've made some pretty significant offensive line upgrades, but nothing that I think is going to completely flip the scripts for the performance of this offensive line. I'm not going to say that they're not going to improve, but I think at best we can expect a middling offensive line. Max Crosby has some of the most opportunities for snaps and potential tackles, and just the just potential to add to the box score and bring points to your fantasy team. So I like Max Crosby this week against a potentially vulnerable and young Patriots offensive line. Jared Verse, I think, is going to be one that might be surprising being up this high, but the Rams playing at the Texans is an outstanding matchup for the second-year edge rusher on the Rams. Jared Verse last year, he was among the top 10 in pressures. He was not among the top 10 in sacks actually converted off of those pressures. I've mentioned before on the show that Jared Verse I'm extremely high on this year. I think he left a lot on the table last year in terms of pressure to sack ratio and being able to convert. And he admitted it's as much in the offseason so far, where he's just talking about that he's got to actually be able to he's got to be a step quicker to get to that quarterback and convert a lot more of those pressures. So I think this is a great opportunity because the Texans were the worst, if not bottom two worst offensive lines in the league last year. CJ Stroud was like the second most sacked quarterback, and they traded their best offensive lineman and made virtually no additions this offseason. I don't care what anybody says about how well this offense is going to perform. If you don't bulk your offensive line, you can't expect any different outcomes. I think they might be looking to get the ball out quicker, and maybe that's their kind of approach to this season without having made any significant upgrades to the offensive line. Maybe they just want to get the ball out quicker. But either way, I think Jared Verse is going to have more than enough opportunity to just beat guys off the line and get back there and get a sack or maybe even two on CJ Stroud this week. So I'm really, really loving this matchup for Jared Verse right off the rip week one. Micah Parsons, this is only caveated with the fact that he just got traded to the Packers. I'm not sure if he's going to play week one. I don't think it's been confirmed whether or not he's going to play in week one, but we hope that he will. He's an intelligent enough player that I feel like he should be able to at least have people kind of help him understand what he should be doing on any given play and be able to at least piece together his first week. So should he play, I think that the Lions still have a nice offensive line. They lost a couple of key pieces, but they've replaced them with some pretty talented pieces as well. But either way, I think Micah Parsons is going to be looking to make a statement for this Packers team, and I think he's going to have some new life under him, some new motivation, new money, new team, new coaching, new everything to play for. So I think, in all honesty, I'm kind of excited to see what kind of fire that Micah Parsons brings to the table with his new team. So. But all that said, it's not exactly the most favorable matchup for week one in terms of kind of where he's at in top five. It's still pretty outstanding for Micah Parsons, but in a little bit more favorable matchup, maybe we'd get him up there in the top 2 or 3. So just a little bit of hesitancy there, but again, he's a top 5 defensive lineman. You can almost throw these guys in a hat and pick them out, and you're not really going to be wrong as to how you rank these top 6 guys. Aiden Hutchinson comes in at number 6. The Lions play the Packers on the other side of the ball. Aiden Hutchinson I just have down at 6, mainly because of injury. I imagine he's going to be starting off a little bit slow this season. It's not going to be just firing off on all cylinders right off the rip, I would imagine. He's a crazy player, so he might just come off and pop week one. But we're playing a little bit of hesitancy here, as again, I mentioned the top 6 guys. You can't really go wrong. We're talking about a couple of spots or something in these top 10 guys. If you've got them ranked up here, you're not really worried about kind of too much about the order. Chances are you only have one of these guys anyways. So. But nonetheless, Aiden Hutchinson, Jordan Love, again, I go back to kind of the matchup. It's also not really a favorable matchup either, because Jordan Love was sacked less than 1 time per game in 2024. But Hutch is a pro's pro, so he can kind of overcome these kind of offensive line successes. But again, just kind of slow start, injury, just not really a favorable matchup. So we're just going to temper expectations a little bit to start the season, see how it plays out, and then we'll kind of come back into some Aiden Hutchinson and see if we need some more accurate readings when we have some stats to kind of look at. So TJ Watt is coming in at 7. This might be a surprise that he's not any higher. Just a terrible matchup. I don't like this matchup against the Jets. They play at New York. And Fields being such a mobile quarterback, he doesn't really take too many sacks. He took maybe a little bit over 1 per game. I guess if anybody's going to get one, it's going to be TJ Watt, but I just don't think there's going to be too much opportunity for TJ Watt to be able to get to him quick enough. Justin Fields is a pretty slippery quarterback, so I think so much of the sacks that he actually gets is him just escaping the pocket and just kind of getting sacked on the edge of the sideline as he gets pushed out of bounds behind the line of scrimmage. So maybe TJ Watt can catch up to him there or something like that. But he's not going to be a guy who's going to sit in the pocket and wait for TJ Watt to just come grab him. So it's going to be a little harder. I think there's going to be a limited opportunity for kind of box score stuffing. So that's kind of my basis with TJ Watt. Again, when you get to these top 7 guys are pretty interchangeable, especially week 1, where there's kind of a lot of variables that are up in the air. So let's move into Trey Hendrickson at number 8 for the Bengals. They play the Browns. Flacco's pretty much a statue. He's a very immobile quarterback. He's not going to leak the pocket, so he's just going to be standing there waiting to be sacked, essentially. He took 2 sacks a game last year behind a better Colts offensive line, and the Browns offensive line is a bottom 10 easy. So I think Trey Hendrickson is happy now. He got paid, so I think now he's ready to get down to business, and it's going to be time to ball in week 1. So Trey Hendrickson, I love him in the top 8 here, with good opportunity in week 1 to kind of get a sack. So I like Trey Hendrickson's big play opportunity in week 1. Andrew Van Ginkel is another guy who I like having some opportunity. The Bears were easily one of the bottom 5 offensive lines in the league. Now, they have made some of the most significant improvements to their offensive line, but being the worst offensive line in the league, or one of the worst, to one of the best, is a pretty tough stretch. I mean, you can have all the talent in the world, but there's a chemistry layer to all of this as well. So I think in week 1 there might be some growing pains or something. I just have a feeling that this team is not just going to go from the worst offensive line in the league to the best overnight, or even in an off season. So I feel like Andrew Van Ginkel have an opportunity to go against one of the most sacked quarterbacks a year ago. I think maybe there's some opportunity here for Andrew Van Ginkel to land home, get some stats to stuff the box score in against a Ben Johnson led offense. There's going to be a lot of plays had. I think the Bears are going to be able to push the ball downfield, but the Vikings are one of the highest blitzing and pressure enforcing teams in the league, at least from a year ago. Nothing's really changed in terms of personnel and coaching. So I think we can expect a pretty decent game from Andrew Van Ginkel to start off. So Brian Burns comes in next for the Giants. He plays at the Commanders. He's my DL10 this week. Jaden Daniels is pretty susceptible to sacks. He was among the top 5 or 5 to 10 most sacked quarterbacks a year ago. He took over 2 sacks per game. Brian Burns is has had more firepower added to this defensive line, and I think the Giants are going to bring the heat week 1 against the Commanders. I think it's this defensive line that's going to keep this team in the game, by putting pressure on Daniels, kind of stuff in the box, limiting the rushing upside of the Giants, or of the Commanders. So I think this is a good opportunity for Brian Burns to really jump in here and make a splash, with Daniels being kind of so susceptible and inexperienced in terms of NFL play. So I think that's where maybe he would just kind of hang around a little bit too long and take a little bit too many sacks. So they made some offensive line improvements, but nothing super significant. This offensive line was a bottom half offensive line, so they might be middling at best. I think Brian Burns ought to have a good week 1. Nick Benito might be another one that might be a surprise, but as the DL11, coming in as a DL1 against the Titans team with a rookie quarterback and a bottom half offensive line. I think this is a big opportunity for Nick Benito to come in and make a splash week 1. I also like Jonathan Cooper as well. Just this Broncos team really has an incredible pass rush, and if you get a rookie quarterback in there week 1 in his first true NFL game, I think he's going to be shaking in his boots a little bit. So, but Cam Ward seems to have a lot of good composure, so I'm sure he'll do fine over the entire course of the season. But this is a heck of a matchup for a rookie quarterback to have in his first real NFL game. So I think Nick Benito is going to bring the heat, and there's going to be some opportunity here for him to capitalize in his first week. So now we've got Danielle Hunter to wrap things up for the Texans. Playing at the Rams. Stafford is having some back issues, so I imagine he's going to be a little bit slower to get the ball out. This is going to give an extra time for Danielle Hunter and guys like Will Anderson and that defensive line to get back there and make some plays on the quarterback. So then you also want to talk about a run-heavy offense. It's It's going to lead to more tackle opportunities for a guy like Danielle Hunter, who has a good tackling floor, gets that 60, 70 plus tackle upside, and has some sack upside as well for us. So I think Hunter is the higher floor Texans edge that you want on this defensive front as well. I think if there's going to be an opportunity for anybody to just have that consistency week in and week out on favorable matchups, it's going to be Danielle Hunter over Will Anderson. Will Anderson, you're really hoping for a sack or two. If he doesn't get it, you're kind of left high and dry. Danielle Hunter's going to bring the tackle floor in a worst case scenario. So I like Danielle Hunter here for week 1. Before we jump into the linebackers, we've got a new promo I want to tell you guys a little bit about. So today's show is brought to you by Fantasy Draft Channel, one of the most innovative products featured recently at the Fantasy Football Expo. Here's the problem with every commissioner that every fantasy commissioner has. Modern drafts become silent, boring affairs. Everyone sits around staring at their phones, waiting for beeps and boops to tell them their turn. Where's the energy? Where's the excitement? There isn't much. The Fantasy Draft Channel solves this with an AI-powered commentary that transforms your sleeper draft into a live broadcast experience. Think ESPN-level commentary, but personalized for your league dynamics. The Fantasy Football Expo team was so impressed that they featured the Fantasy Draft Channel at Draft Night Out event. The response was incredible. People were laughing and engaging with each other, discussing the commentary instead of just staring at their screens. With only 1 week left in draft season, don't let your remaining drafts be forgettable. Fantasy Draft Channel brings back the energy and social experience that made fantasy football fun in the first place. If you're drafting on Sleeper this week or Labor Day weekend, visit fantasydraftchannel.com and use code LAUNCH10 for $10 off your first draft, and your league will thank you for the upgrade. So go check that out, fantasydraftchannel.com. All right, now let's jump into some linebackers. We've got top 12 linebackers. We'll go ahead and rip them off here. Zaire Franklin comes in at number 1. Roquan Smith, number 2. T.J. Edwards, number 3. Terrell Bernard, number 4. Foye Oluokun, number 5. Fred Warner, number 6. Jamie Sherwood, number 7. Number 8 is Ernest Jones. Number 9 is Logan Wilson. Number 10 is Jordan Brooks. Number 11, Zach Vaughn. Number 12, Caden Ellis. Let's talk about matchups a little bit here. Zaire Franklin off the top plays the Dolphins. Zaire Franklin is pretty well going to remain at the top for much of this season, I imagine, barring any catastrophic happenings. I guess Zaire is atop the tackle charts right now. Matchups don't really matter. He finds a way each and every week. And Miami is going to utilize the running back position quite a bit as long as Tua is healthy. So Devontae Achane, Ollie Gordon, those guys are going to be heavily involved. Zaire Franklin is just a tackle sponge. The guy's going to get as many as he possibly can. He's no stranger to double-digit sack games on the regular. Roquan Smith playing the Bills, another run-heavy matchup that's going to favor linebackers. The more rushing attempts that a team has, the more it favors the opposite linebackers. They just kind of fall right into those rushing lanes. That's essentially their job, is to kind of guard those rushing lanes and just kind of plug them up. So Roquan Smith is one of the best in the business. Bills ran the ball the 9th most times in 2024, and the outlook hasn't changed. Nothing's really changed about the makeup of this team. They might be a little bit more pass heavy as guys are getting healthy, but their bread and butter is the run game. So I think Roquan will be soaking up tackles all over the middle of the field. T.J. Edwards at number 3, playing the Vikings. Vikings added Jordan Mason to sack depth in the backfield, prepping for more run plays to help J.J. McCarthy adjust in his first year under center. And it's his second year in the NFL, but first year actually playing some meaningful snaps. So they brought in some running back help, bulked the offensive line. They plan to be a little bit more run heavy this year. I think it's going to favor the linebackers. T.J. Edwards is one of the best, again, at gathering tackles. I heard rumblings that he and Tremaine Edmonds might be switching linebacker roles. I don't know how true that is. We're just going to have to wait and see, but I'm not going to take that to the bank. I only saw it once or twice, and it didn't look like it was you just want to see that more blown up a little bit more, and I didn't. So I'm not going to take that to the bank. I think T.J. Edwards is locked in as a top 3 linebacker. Terrell Bernard plays the Ravens this week. Again, the Ravens-Bills game is going to be a heavily favored rushing game. So I think that linebackers on both sides are going to be in great opportunities. So Terrell Bernard being number 4 might be a little surprising, but don't underrate this guy. He's no stranger to 140 plus tackle seasons. He's got the upside. He even rushes the passer a little bit as well. And the Ravens ran the ball the second most times in the NFL last year. Terrell Bernard will be eating Derrick Henry trucks all game. So he's going to be the one that's going to be eating up all those Derrick Henry tackles. So I think the tackles should come in droves as Derrick Henry could touch the ball 20 or more times in this game. So not to mention that Lamar Jackson is a rushing quarterback as well, so there's more opportunity there. So Terrell Bernard at number 4. Now we've got Foye at number 5. You better believe in the bounce back as they play the Panthers this week. I truly don't think that the matchup is going to matter. I think Foye is going to go right back to being a 10-plus tackle per game kind of linebacker. So sorry, not sorry. I know a lot of people are kind of scared of Foye after last year, but I've mentioned before on this show, combination of injury, deflated, a failure to the team on the coaching staff's part. They didn't want to play for the coaching staff. He had a little bit of an injury, just a complete scheme change, just randomly out of the blue by the coaching staff. Now you get some more consistency, a fresh new life in this team, and I think that everything's going to kind of mellow out and go back to normal. And maybe that's too short-sighted of me to think, but it was pretty peculiar what happened last year, where they just Doug Peterson randomly changed up the scheme of this defense, and things just fell apart. So I think things will kind of level out now. Foye playing the Panthers, they're a pretty run-heavy team, where Chuba Hubbard was getting pretty easily 15, 20 or more touches a game last year. But it really doesn't matter, because Foye's going to go get his tackles either way. So I think he'll find them, and he'll probably be one of the top performing linebackers right off the rip. So don't be surprised when you see that. Fred Warner at number 6, playing the Seahawks this week. Seattle's already expressed that they plan to focus more on the run game, become more run heavy. And I think they're going to bring an offensive run scheme that's going to favor the running backs a little bit more. So I think you're going to see more rushes kind of break into that second layer of the defense, where Fred Warner is going to have more tackle opportunities. So I think he's going to be busy. The Seahawks also had a terrible offensive line, so that may allow for some sack opportunities for a guy like Fred Warner right off the rip. He will rush the passer, but it's not a significant amount. Just kind of saying, a favorable matchup there if he blitzes the quarterback. Maybe he lands home. Number 7, Jamien Sherwood, the top solo tackler from a year ago, plays the Jets this week in week 1. So, like I mentioned right off the top number 1 in solo tackles a year ago. So the Steelers have always historically been run heavy. Now the makeup of this team is not that of what we've seen in recent years, where they usually have a big bruising back that's just going to take a bunch that is going to take a huge workload. They've got Jalen Warren and kind of a bigger rookie back, but they haven't expressed a lot of confidence in that rookie back. So we'll just kind of see how it's going to end up looking. But I imagine they're going to run quite a bit because Mike Tomlin just historically has always run the ball a lot. I know Aaron Rodgers is there, but they're still going to run the ball. So I think there should be plenty of opportunity for Jamien Sherwood to continue off of his 2024 season. Ernest Jones for the Seattle Seahawks plays the 49ers this week. This is a kind of a favorable matchup on both sides of the ball, where you're going to see a lot of rushing from the Seahawks and 49ers. I think the league is going back to more of a rushing league, where it was kind of formed into a passing league as of the last several years. But 49ers are going to run the ball. A lot of their pass catchers are injured. Pretty much all of them have been injured recently, except for George Kittle, which is kind of surprising because he has his injuries as of his own. So I think Ernest Jones is going to be in a great position to soak up a lot of Christian McCaffrey tackles, and I think he's going to have a good chance to start off the season very hot against a high rushing volume 49ers team. Logan Wilson makes the top 10 in week 1 for me against the Browns. The Browns are another one of those teams, much like the Steelers, who historically use a hefty dose of the run game. So I think they've leaned on Jerome Ford pretty heavily for 15, 20 plus touches a game over the course of much of a season before. So I don't see them leaning against kind of what their historical what they've done historically. So I think that you're going to see a lot of Jerome Ford. You're going to see a lot of rushing. You're probably going to see more passing than usual, just because they got Joe Flacco under center of this, so they can sling it a little bit more. But we've seen this team use a lot of Jerome Ford. So I think we're going to see Logan Wilson being the only pure tackling player on this entire Bengals defense. I think Logan Wilson is going to have his hands full every week. It's not really going to matter what matchup it is. So, in week 1, starting off with against the Browns, I think Logan Wilson's going to be an important piece of this Bengals defense to try to keep the Browns limited in terms of offensive efficiency. So, I like Logan Wilson in week 1. I really like for him to have a bounce back season after being injured in 2024 and maybe even have the best season of his career. He was on pace last year to do so, so I think he is very capable of doing that this year. Jordan Brooks makes the top 10 as well. Plays the Colts this week. The Colts' best player is Jonathan Taylor, and they're flat out they're just going to use him a lot. Last year, for much of the season, he was getting 20 or more touches a game. If you split that up among linebackers and just say 5 touches or 5 tackles a person, you're already starting off with a 5 tackle floor. I think Jordan Brooks is a guy who's no stranger to double-digit consistency in terms of just tackles a game. So I think Jordan Brooks, this is a great matchup for him in week 1, playing heavy rushing offense. Excuse me. My gosh, words are hard there. So I think first week, there's a great matchup for opposing linebackers playing the Colts. So, also somebody later on to kind of keep in mind is the green dot linebacker Tyrell Dodson for the Miami Dolphins. Both these Miami Dolphins linebackers, I think, are going to be pretty solid producers this year. So, especially week 1 in what projects to be a run-heavy matchup against the Colts, I think that, especially with Daniel Jones under center, I think the Colts are going to be able to sustain a little bit longer drives and get more opportunity for snaps for opposing defensive players as well. So, love Jordan Brooks for this season. Zach Bond has fallen down to number 11. He plays the Cowboys this week. This matchup is pretty icky for linebackers, so that's kind of my basis here for having him so far down. He might have rose up to top 5 or 6 play had he been in a more favorable matchup. But Zach Bond playing the Cowboys, they just got Javonte Williams. I don't know what this is going to look like. I got to figure 10 to 15 touches out of the backfield on the ground for a guy like Javonte Williams, which is really limiting the opportunity for opposing linebackers. But Zach Bond's a guy who last year finished as a top 5 linebacker overall. It really didn't matter the matchup. He's one of those who just kind of went out there and got his. So maybe there might be some opportunity for him to rush Dak Prescott and get back there and get a sack, and maybe that's where he gets his points this week. But I don't think it's going to come from the tackle side. I don't think he's going to reach more of the ceiling play in terms of tackles this week. I think you're probably going to see a little bit more of his floor. So I think with Zach Bond, you're kind of hoping that he does rush Dak Prescott because they figure to pass a shit ton. So you just hope that Zach Bond gets in on some pass rush snaps and maybe gets an opportunity to get back there and land home. Nonetheless, I think he's got a pretty outstanding floor. So even though you're going to see his floor is still pretty high overall. We're talking about some of the top linebackers. So don't worry about Zach Bond. I'm just saying, opposed to these other guys kind of in the top 12, he just doesn't figure to have the kind of matchup that some of these other guys do. But he does have a solid floor. So that's not to say that he's going to underperform. It's just to say that I like these other guys better. So now, Caden Ellis. Week 1 makes the top 12, plays the Buccaneers. Buccaneers last year were top 10 in rush attempts. So 2025 figures to be much of the same, especially under new offensive coordinator. They've got a bunch of good running backs over there in Tampa, so I think they're going to utilize all 2 or 3 of them. So I think you're going to see a lot of Bucky Irving, probably 18, 20 plus times a game, and Caden Ellis is going to be heavily involved in stopping a lot of those rushing opportunities. So, and then you also talk about the fact that Caden Ellis is also a pass rushing quarterback or linebacker, so he's going to have opportunity to rush the quarterback and maybe even land a sack on the 10th most sacked quarterback from a year ago in Baker Mayfield. So there might be an opportunity for some big plays here, but I think Caden Ellis is also going to have a favorable matchup for floor play here as well in terms of tackles. So he's no stranger to 8 or 10 plus tackles in a game. I think he's going to see plenty of work in week 1. So Caden Ellis rounds it out. All right, so let's wrap up the show here. We're going to round out the linebackers real quick just to kind of recap. Zaire Franklin, Roquan Smith, TJ Edwards, Terrell Bernard, Foye Luakun, Fred Warner, Jamien Sherwood at number 7, Ernest Jones, Logan Wilson, Jordan Brooks, Zach Bond, and Caden Ellis make the top 12 for week 1. All right, now let's get into defensive backs. Each week, it's pretty much probably going to be Travis Hunter unless something catastrophic happens. So, and for me, that the caveat with this is you obviously have to be in a league where your IDPs can get offensive scoring points. It's got to be a combined league. If you're playing in an IDP only league, I'm probably not putting Travis Hunter in my top 12. He's not sniffing anything in the top 12. I probably won't be drafting him if it's in the IDP only league that doesn't get offensive points. So, just wanted to throw that out there right off the top, but nonetheless, I mentioned it before on the show, and I'll reiterate. Travis Hunter, basically for your team in offense and IDP leagues, opens up an additional roster spot on your offense because you essentially get to put a wide receiver in your defensive back slot, and that is an incredible floor. You're probably looking at an 8 to 10 point floor for a guy like Travis Hunter, who can just add more as he gets a better game on offense or gets an interception and some tackles. And then not to mention, yeah, you put that wide receiver in your defensive back slot, you have an extra flex player on the offensive side of the ball as well. So Travis Hunter really is a cheat code. I'm super excited to see kind of how this season performs. Season goes. I just hope that he can stay together with all the snaps that he's going to be on the field for. So Travis Hunter should be number one in combined leagues where he can score offensive points. So he will always be number one. Then Brian Branch is probably, for much of the time, going to be number two as well. Brian Branch is nickel corner, or strong safety, I guess he was nickel corner, for the Detroit Lions. Top overall defensive back outside of Hunter on a week-to-week basis. The Packers lean on Jacobs in the run game, and Branch will be active at the line of scrimmage where he often plays. So again, run-heavy matchups are going to favor players that play around the line of scrimmage. Ryan Branch sees a hefty amount of box snaps. He's going to get a lot of tackles as a result. So I think, and in the sack department, maybe there's I mentioned earlier, Jordan Love's not one to give up too many sacks. But maybe from a defensive back, maybe you can get in there on a blitz and surprise him. So, but we're not going to bank on that. Brian Branch makes his bread and butter in pass deflections and coverage and around the line of scrimmage, just making tackles. So I think he's going to start off the season pretty solid. So he's got a decent little matchup there. Now we've got Budda Baker here at number 3 going up against the Saints. I think we can expect a lot of short area gameplay from the Saints with periodic shots downfield as they just kind of look to get their quarterbacks just adjusted to the flow of the NFL. They're looking to play two quarterbacks who virtually have little to no experience or any success in the NFL whatsoever. So I think they're going to be trying to get some bread and butter plays, some dump offs to Kamara, some tight end targets, some short crossers across the middle of the field where they don't have to chuck the ball downfield all that often. And then they'll take shots to Rashid Shaheed. So with Budda's box alignment, I think this should play nicely, albeit with limited opportunity because the Saints offense is probably not going to be pushing the ball downfield. It's probably not going to have as many opportunities for snaps for opposing defensive players, but Budda Baker really is one of these guys that, again, matchups really don't matter. His alignment and usage on the field is just going to garner production. And he's one of the players who does his job very well. So he's going to be among the top defensive backs for much of the season, again, barring any catastrophic failure. So week 1, love some Budda Baker. Now we get Antoine Winfield, number 4, playing against the Falcons this week. Antoine Winfield was well on his way to 113 or more tackles and 4 sacks in 2024 before he went down. But this year, coming into the season healthy, we're starting him comfortably in what projects to be a pretty back and forth affair for the Buccaneers and the Falcons. Yeah, I do expect this game I do expect both teams, to be able to push the ball downfield and allow for more snap opportunities for both defenses. So Winfield, again, just you'll notice a trend. A lot of defensive backs who play around the box and get a lot of box snaps because when you're around the ball, especially with defensive backs, the more you're around the ball, the more production you put on paper, the more points you put on our fantasy team. So Antoine Winfield playing the Falcons, they're going to do a heavy mix of rushing and passing. And Antoine Winfield is great in coverage, and he's not great in coverage. Antoine Winfield is more of a run stuffer, a pass rusher kind of defensive back, but he will get in there and make some plays. So I think Winfield ought to be busy in week 1. Derwin James is number 5 here against the Chiefs. There's a little bit of emotional baggage tied to this one. If you watch any of the Chargers-Chiefs games, things can get kind of chippy between Derwin James and Travis Kelce because he guards him every year. And so I think that with Rashee Rice being injured, Travis Kelce is going to be heavily featured early and often in this game. And I think Derwin James is going to get many tackles as a result. So I think this is going to be a pretty intense game, and Derwin's going to want to make an impact. Kelce's going to want to make an impact. I mean, there's going to be a lot of back and forth here, and I think that Derwin James is going to be heavily involved in a lot of plays that are going to be kind of favored around Travis Kelce. So I think Derwin James ought to have his hands full. I've got Kyle Hamilton here at number 6 playing against the Bills. It's a big matchup, the Ravens against the Bills. I'm excited to kind of watch that one and see how that one unfolds. But I expect Hamilton's box alignment to play in his favor in a run-heavy matchup. The more you're around the ball, the more you're around the line, especially in a run-heavy matchup, the more opportunity you're going to have to pad the stats. So the upside may be limited with a light amount of passing, so he's not going to get many points in coverage for or opportunities to rush the passer. So the big play upside may be limited. He may have to hit home with the tackles in this one. So might be a little bit of a shaky floor for him. So that's probably why I have him at 6 here among the top instead of a little bit higher. Jesse Bates comes in at number 7. Playing the Buccaneers this week. The Falcons front 7 is middling overall at best. So I think Bates will see some rushes break into the second layer, and he will also be active in coverage in what figures to be a heavy passing matchup. Baker Mayfield would throw the ball 30 to 40 times a game. Jesse Bates thrives in coverage, where he's going to get you some interceptions, some pass deflections, and just be a pure tackler as well. So I think that in this week, in this matchup, he ought to have his hands full. He should have opportunity all year long to soak up extra tackles as rushes break into the second layer, and then especially in pass heavy matchups, I think that Jesse Bates is just gonna do what he always does, and like I said, his bread and butter is pass deflections, interceptions, and again tackles in the secondary. So you add more in the rushing game where you have a middling front 7, more chances for him to get tackles here. So Kevin Byard comes in at number 8. Might be a surprise. Defensive backs, I will never say that I am an expert on. In all honesty, in all of my leagues, I pretty much grab a couple of these studs from the top 12, and then I stream whatever after that. So if you need help streaming, go look up Johnny the Greek on Twitter. He puts out some great stuff, and he's got a 70% hit rate. He'll tell you what cornerbacks are in favorable matchups. To be honest, there's just so many defensive backs, and the positional variation is just so high that different guys are going to finish in the top 12 week in and week out. There's really very little consistency outside of the top 12-ish guys, I think, here. So so we've got Kevin Byard here playing the Minnesota Vikings, and I think that this projects to be a pretty favorable matchup. But especially with Kevin Byard's alignment, like I said, many or all of these guys are going to line up around the line of scrimmage or just have a nose for tackling. So he was actually 3rd in overall run defense snaps for qualifying defensive backs a year ago. Plays around the line of scrimmage, top end tackler at the position, is going to get you 110 plus tackles week in and week out. He's going to have a pretty solid 7 to 8 tackle average. So the Vikings figure to run the ball more with Mason in town, as I mentioned earlier. So I think Kevin Byard is going to have more opportunity for snaps as they kind of look to rush the ball a little bit more. So you love Kevin Byard this week. He's a solid guy you can kind of set in there until the wheels fall off. He's a little bit old, but definitely one that brings his lunch pail to work, is going to put up his production. So Alontae Taylor comes in next, playing against the Arizona Cardinals at number 9. And I think the Saints nickelback, he will be on the field a ton because the offense is just going to be terrible and the defense is going to be on the field. Just watch the snap counts of this team. The offense is probably going to have a lot of 3 and outs, so you're going to see the defense even more than you have before. And the DPs playing high box snaps are our best producers in IDP at the defensive back position. So the Cardinals being a top end rushing team in terms of overall attempts on the season last year, I think that projects to be a lot of the same for this year. So Alontae Taylor should be busy in his first week against the Cardinals. So love that. I think James Conner is going to be running the ball quite a bit. He's kind of a guy that they like to operate the offense through, one of the more reliable Cardinals players. So I think Alontae Taylor's probably going to have some extra opportunities for tackles here. So then we've got Tyler Nubin at number 10, my number 10 defensive back for the week. For the playing against the Washington Commanders, Tyler Nubin is just a high floor tackler. His season got cut short last year due to injury, but he was on pretty good pace last year. So, and as I mentioned, all these guys are nickelback or just box type defensive backs where their role just kind of happens to have them around the ball and a lot of the action. So Tyler Nubin is no stranger to any of that. He fits right in with these guys, one of the higher end defensive backs taken in last year's draft. So and I think considering the matchup against the Commanders, where you've got a quarterback that's also susceptible to taking passes and taking sacks and making mistakes, Tyler Nubin has some opportunity here to maybe catch Jaden Daniels off the edge or something like that. And maybe have an opportunity for some stuffs or sacks. But nonetheless, Tyler Nubin already displayed a high tackling floor in the league, so I think he is going to be a high-end producer week in and week out, well deserving of this top 10 number. Then we've got Julian Love here playing against the San Francisco 49ers at number 11. Julian Love, for the last 3 or 4 years since he came from New York, has just been a high-end producer every week. One of these defensive backs you can pretty well set and forget, and that's really nice to have in IDP. So Julian Love playing the 49ers in week 1. Again, guy playing around the line of scrimmage in a run-heavy matchup. It's just a favorable situation for a defensive back playing around the line of scrimmage. And last year overall, he's just on the field a ton too, because last year he was top 10 in overall snaps on the entire season. So again, in a run-heavy matchup, I think Julian Love will be busy. And then to round out the top 12, we've got another Bears defensive back who I like for this year, and that's Jaquan Brisker, again playing the Vikings. Both of these defensive backs often kind of rotate back and forth playing around the line of scrimmage. And, I think even Jaquan Brisker has a little bit more upside for big plays. He's not going to he kind of has a respectable floor, not quite as high of a tackling floor as Kevin Byard here. But he does have more potential for a big play upside. I like Jaquan Brisker a couple years ago, and he's really kind of slowly taken a couple steps up from entering the league in terms of overall production, and he's maintained a very high floor overall. So he's going to get your tackles, and there's going to be some opportunity here for him to kind of get his hands on some pass deflections and coverage and things like that, especially with J.J. McCarthy at quarterback. There's potential for mistakes to be made here. So I think defensive backs are going to be pretty busy against the Minnesota Vikings, especially Jaquan Brisker and Kevin Byard. So that's going to round out the week 1 rankings. We've gone through defensive linemen, linebackers, defensive backs. We'll round it out and we'll just not talk about, we're going to get out of here. So defensive line, 1 through 12, Nick Bosa, Myles Garrett, Max Crosby, Jared Verse, Michael Parsons, Aiden Hutchinson, TJ Watt, Trey Hendrickson, Andrew Van Ginkel, Brian Burns, Nick Benito, Daniel Hunter. The linebacker, 1 through 12, we've got Zaire Franklin, Roquan Smith, TJ Edwards, Terrell Bernard, Foye Oluokun, Fred Warner, Jamie Sherwood, Ernest Jones, Logan Wilson, Jordan Brooks, Zach Bond, Caden Ellison. At defensive back, we've got Travis Hunter, Brian Branch, Buda Baker, Antoine Winfield, Derwin James, Kyle Hamilton, Jesse Bates, Kevin Byard, Alontae Taylor, Tyler Nubin, Julian Love, and Jaquan Brisker. Thank you guys for tuning in, and if you have any questions about your lineup and your start-sit decisions, waiver wire questions, throw it in the comments, please. I'd be happy to answer them. I will be monitoring the YouTube comments religiously all week long until Sunday to try to help you as much as I can. So thank you guys for tuning in. You can expect this show to come out every week throughout the NFL season. So rock with me week in and week out, and we'll look to get you guys some fantasy championships this year. So thank you as always, and we will see you next time on the IDP Plus podcast.
Thank you for watching the IDP Plus YouTube network. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Be sure to tap the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload new content.